Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
To Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Reed Darcey talking LSU women's basketball in 15 minutes. It is March now. LSU's home season is in the books for the regular season. They'll be back for the NCAA tournament, I am sure. But are they in trouble as far as seeding goes now that they've lost a couple of games in the last week? What's the latest on Flau'jae Johnson? All that with Reed Darcey coming up 15 minutes from right now. Also, should the Saints move on from Tyrann Mathieu? We will discuss that later on in this hour as well. If you missed any of the first hour, talked a lot of LSU baseball in the first 30 minutes of the show, and then got into some LSU basketball and then some SEC baseball to finish things up. So you can catch any of that on demand wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about the NFL Combine, which is finishing up as we speak up in Indianapolis. The NFL just has a remarkable way of staying in the news cycle all year round. You can't shake it at all. You've got from the Super Bowl, you go right into the Combine, you get into the free agency and the draft, and then you get into mini camps and OTAs and schedule releases and the whole thing. You just never really lose sight of what's going on in the NFL. And the Combine took center stage for the league over the last week in Indianapolis, and some of the LSU guys were there, and I thought it was a really, really good week for Will Campbell. Will Campbell tested, in my opinion, very, very well in the 40-yard dash, which, look, left tackles not using the 40-yard dash a ton. We get it. But he did break 5 seconds. He was 4.98 in the 40-yard dash, which was a good number for him, I think. One of the numbers that really stood out to me, and this, quite honestly, might be a little bit more on the negative side than on the positive side for Will Campbell, negative side for Zy Alexander. Will Campbell out-jumped on the vertical Zy Alexander. Will Campbell had a 32-inch vertical. Zy Alexander was 31.5 inches. But to me, that shows some explosiveness for Will Campbell as well. A lot was made of Will Campbell's arm size, the arm length that he measured in the measurements earlier in the week. And then Will Campbell went right to the podium and was like, you can turn on the tape. Not one time when I get beat do you think, oh, man, his arms aren't long enough. And so we'll see whoever takes Will Campbell in this draft and where they decide to slot him. I feel like he's going to be given an opportunity to play tackle. And I think that this week in Indianapolis did nothing to hurt his chances. I thought he tested well. I thought he ran well. I thought he jumped well. I know he's going to do very, very well in those interview rooms. So I think a good week for Will Campbell. I think the testing may have hurt Zy Alexander. This is just my opinion. I certainly don't have any inside sources in the league that are indicating anything to me. I just am reading the numbers off the page. Zy Alexander ran a 4.56, which is not awesome for a corner. Talk about the vertical. Will Campbell had a 32-inch vertical. Savion Jones had a 33-inch vertical. And Zy Alexander came in at 31.5, lower than Savion Jones and Will Campbell. Two guys. I mean, Will Campbell's over 300 pounds, and Savion Jones is a big physical defensive end. Those guys had a higher vertical than Zy Alexander. You go to the broad jump. Savion Jones, 9 feet 11 inches. Zy Alexander, 9 feet 8 inches. So again, beaten in one of the explosive drills by a lineman. I don't know that that's super good. The only LSU Tiger that did the bench press was Savion Jones. He put up 19 reps on the bench. I thought that as I mentioned, the winner of the Combine for LSU was probably Will Campbell. I think that Zy Alexander had a tough go of it. I thought Savion Jones acquitted himself pretty nicely. He broad jumped 9 feet 11 inches and had a vertical of 33 inches. Savion Jones is an interesting case because that's a guy who was kind of figuring to be the next dude at LSU. You had a kind of a run there where you had Caleb Chason, you had B.J. Ojulari, and you thought that next up would probably be Savion Jones, and he just didn't really pop his first 3 years. He came in from St. James, long, athlete with all the tools that you could have, and just never really put it together until the final year. And Kevin Peoples came in and really coached him and Braden Swinson up. And you saw a different player this past year in Savion Jones than you had his first 3 years at LSU. It didn't show up necessarily in the pass rush part of the game. He wasn't a huge pass rusher for LSU. Swinson handled a lot of that. But against the run, at the point of attack, setting the edge, those types of things, I thought Savion Jones did a pretty good job. He gets to go to the combine, and I thought, again, acquitted himself pretty nicely in those drills. I think Savion Jones is going to be a mid-round draft choice, and hopefully he makes it in the league. That would be awesome for him. Miles Frazier, testing-wise, was okay. 5.2 in the 40-yard dash. The vertical was 31 inches. His broad jump was 9 feet. None of that is eye-popping at all. What's going to help Miles Frazier is his effort at the Senior Bowl. By all accounts, Jake and T-Bob were there. The folks that were there in scouting terms with the reviews that came out afterward, it sounds like Miles Frazier did an awesome job in the Senior Bowl prep and the workouts, and it sounds like that's going to be a huge feather in his cap. There's a lot of tape that's out on Miles Frazier right now. He played a ton of college football. He played a couple years prior to LSU, and then he started for 3 years at LSU. So he's got 5 years of football that's right there on tape. And when you do that, you've got ample opportunity to be scouted, and then he goes to the combine. He was okay, but again, I think the tape and the workouts of the Senior Bowl are going to be a big deal for him. So that was kind of my takes from the combine. Braden Swinson did participate in the 3-cone and the 20-yard shuttle, but he didn't do anything else. So I think the tape is going to be Braden Swinson's best friend. He does something that you absolutely positively must have. I don't know that he's toward the top of this draft as far as the edge rushers and the guys getting after and affecting the passers, but you figure 3rd, 4th round, I think Braden Swinson will have his name called, and Kevin Peoples deserves a ton of credit for that as well. So if you want a full report on the combine, you can find the times up there at NFL.com. I'm also this afternoon going to have a piece up at LouisianaSports.net that details what the guys did in the combine. Winner, I thought Will Campbell, maybe not on the positive side. Zy Alexander and those explosive numbers, just not quite great. But Zy had a good year in coverage, so hopefully that film helps him out in a way that maybe the testing does not. So that's your look at LSU at the Combine up in Indianapolis. If you're looking for LSU football content all year long, you can find it Hunt on LSU. There's no baseball, there's no basketball, there's no women's basketball, there's no nothing except football on that channel. So go check that out wherever you find your podcast, or of course on YouTube. It is Hunt on LSU. Got a lot to do over the last 50 minutes of the show here. We're going to talk Saints. Should the Saints cut Tyrann Mathieu, or should they keep the old Tiger around? We'll talk about that a little bit later. But when we come back, Reed Darcey covers the LSU women's basketball team for The Advocate. We'll get caught up on what's new with them as the most important time of year is upon us in the basketball world. It is, of course, March, and the NCAA tournament is just 2 weeks away. So we'll talk with Reed Darcey coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every single model in the Genesis line was given the IIHA top safety pick. Some of them were given top safety picks plus. Safety is very, very important to the folks at Genesis, and I know it's important to you, the car buyer. When you get behind the wheel of a Genesis, you'll feel the difference. You'll see how sleek and stylish it is. You'll see all those bells and whistles that are there for you. You'll feel the comfort, but you'll rest assured that you've got one of the safest vehicles on the road. It's vital to the folks over at Genesis, and you can get behind the wheel at Genesis of Baton Rouge. You may not have been there. It's on Airline at Piku, right across from Women's Hospital. If you haven't been, stop on by. You're probably going to be on Airline Highway anyway if you're buying a vehicle in Baton Rouge. Just make the stop into Genesis and see the difference. Let their brand ambassadors get you behind the wheel. Get behind there and see that Genesis difference. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
John Rothstein hit the tweet over the weekend. This is March. It is March. It's March the 3rd, and that means it is officially time to start thinking about the NCAA basketball tournament, both the men and the women. LSU's men probably not going to be in it. The women will be in it. The question is, can they make a run towards another championship? Reed Darcey covers the team for the Advocate. He's good enough to give us a few minutes here on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Reed, thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hunt. How are you, man?
Doing quite well. Let's talk about the injury to Flau'jae Johnson first, because obviously that was the news of the weekend. Flau'jae in a walking boot. Kim Mulkey announced that she's not going to participate in the SEC tournament. They're going to try to get her as healthy as possible. What can you tell us about the injury, how long it's been there, and what her prospects are for the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, so we know it is shin inflammation. That is the official term that Kim Mulkey used to describe it yesterday. So if you want to call it shin inflammation, shin splints, I think it's up to you. And we know Flau'jae's been battling this for a couple of weeks now. Ever since LSU really lost to Texas, I think it's when it's really been bugging her. If you remember from that game, LSU had her listed as questionable the day before, and then she was a game-time decision. She ended up playing around 37 minutes that day, and then Mulkey said she was fine. And then after that, she didn't pop up on the availability report until Saturday. But once she did, she was out. And then Mulkey said on Sunday that she was shutting her down for the SEC tournament. So that kind of issue is just a pain management type of deal. It really can only get better with time and with rest. And so I think that's how LSU is attacking it. They're trying to play it safe, make sure that some of that pain can subside by the time the games really matter in the NCAA tournament.
This is an impossible question to answer, I know, but just your general sense. What is your expectation of Flau'jae's ability to play in the NCAA tournament? Should she look like her old self, or do you think she's going to be compromised?
I think she'll look like her old self. I think a good 3 weeks is probably a nice little resting period to get her back to full strength. You know, it's still a pain management deal, you know, and I think that's enough time to probably give her what she needs to get back to, if not 100%, close to 100%. I think that's the calculus that LSU is making here. I think she gets up for big games. If you remember last year in the NCAA tournament, that was really when she started ascending into the star that she is now, right? It was those games that she was one of the best guards in all the country in the tournament, right? And she really helped LSU win the Sweet 16 game against UCLA and get to the Elite Eight. I think she'll be ready to go. She'll be gearing up, and it sort of seems like the spotlight, when the spotlight is at its brightest, she's at her best, and so I think she'll be ready to go once the NCAA tournament starts.
Kim Mulkey has had her teams ready for March for decades now, and you would imagine this would be no different. However, you are coming in here with a couple of recent losses to Alabama and Ole Miss. Is there a common thread to those two losses that needs to be answered before they start playing for keeps?
I think the common thread is that they were both close games, and LSU didn't execute its offense well enough down the stretch of those close games. We've seen throughout the season that LSU has done a really good job of closing out games, right? If you think back to both Tennessee games, you know, Kentucky game, Oklahoma, and even back to the non-conference when they played Stanford and Washington, they did a really good job of closing out those close games. Recently, it hasn't been as successful, right? Texas, they lost that close game, and now two of them to Alabama and Ole Miss. I think if you look at the Alabama loss in particular, there's a through line between that one and the Texas loss. That's the free throws, right? Yeah. LSU missed 9 free throws, I think, against Texas, and then they missed 7, or was it 9 against Alabama? I'm getting them mixed up, but the point is that LSU missed a bunch of free throws in close games, and that's one of the main reasons why they lost. Against Ole Miss, they couldn't really get enough offense from their contributors, not named Anissa Morrow and Michaela Williams, and they couldn't find enough offense to keep pace with an Ole Miss team. They really caught fire from three-point range. So I think if you look at the free throws and the scoring they're getting from their role players and their bench contributors, it hasn't been good enough to pick up a couple wins towards the end of the regular season here.
Too many turnovers yesterday. How much of that do you attribute to not having Flau'jae out there, who's one of your primary ball handlers?
Yeah, that was big. I think LSU went in the second half once Ole Miss turned up its pressure, and then the backcourt. It went with a couple ball handlers last year, Poa and Miracle Shepherd, to really try to break that press, and I think they did a good job to give LSU good minutes. But the problem is when you have both of them on the floor, it really doesn't open up much space for Kaylin Gilbert, right? And she's your scorer. She's that extra shot creator that you need, especially when you don't have Flau'jae Johnson. So because LSU needed extra ball handling on the floor, she kind of took a step back, and I think they really could have used her scoring down the stretch of that game, especially because they didn't have Flau'jae in the game. So I think maybe, you know, just need an extra shot creator, right? And in close games like that, and Flage wasn't available to do that. And so maybe, once she gets back, maybe she'll have that added element. But I think LSU really needs to try to figure out a way to get more consistent production from its ball handlers, especially shooting and scoring production. They need to find a way to get Kaylin Gilbert going because they're going to need her not only this week in the SEC tournament, but they're going to need her once the NCAA tournament starts as well.
Look, I'm not an expert on USC, UCLA, UConn, even South Carolina, but I know LSU's guards are good enough to play with anybody. Is LSU good enough in the front court outside of Morrow to make a real run at this thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think they have what they need in the front court. The rebounding is fine. They lost Angel Reese, but the rebounding hasn't really taken too much of a hit, and rebounding is a huge deal for a Kim Mulkey team, especially this one that likes to play a lot in transition. They really have to clean the defensive glass, and they've done a good job of that this season. I think between Anissa and between Samaya Smith and Jersey Wolfenbarger, there's enough size, height, and length there to really do what they need to do on the defensive glass and then get out in transition and run. So I'm not exactly too concerned about their size and their length. I think they can defend some of the top post players in the country that way. When you look at a team like, say, UCLA, say LSU runs into them again. UCLA is one of probably the best center in the country, Lauren Betts, that played her last year. Yeah. I think LSU has enough size to compete with her and to guard her and to really hold her in check. But I think it does need more scoring out of those positions, right? Samaya Smith didn't score in the second half yesterday. It could have used a little bit more offensive production from her, especially since the guards weren't giving you much scoring either. So I think that they're okay on the rebounding. A lot of that has to do with Anissa, but I think, just like as it goes for all the other role players, they could use some more scoring from those two inside.
What do you think Kim Mulkey thinks of her team? I always enjoy her press conferences and what she has to say. And what do you think she's thinking right now?
I think that she thinks that at their best, they can win the national championship, that is inside of this team. There's a version of this team that can make it to the Final Four. And once they get to the Final Four, I think Kim Mulkey likes her chances of winning the national championship. But there's the matter of having to get that version of them out, right, in time for the NCAA tournament. I think she's probably wishing she had a little bit more consistent point guard play. She's probably wishing she had a little bit more scoring off the bench more consistently. And I think if she's looking at those two things and she's saying, hey, if I can figure out a way to get those things working by the time the tournament heats up, then you've got the makings of a Final Four team. But until then, until those two things figured out, LSU could easily find itself on the outside of the Final Four looking in, whether that loss comes in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, I'm not sure. But the thing is that LSU has as much talent as anybody in the country when you look at the three stars. It just needs to find the right complement of role players that really accentuate their strengths and really bring out the best of them because those three, they can get you all the way. It's a matter of getting enough production around them.
Is it your opinion that the rest of the country is a little bit weaker than it has been in the last 4 or 5 years when you look at the monsters that South Carolina has produced and Caitlin Clark being a real problem? Do you think that the top of the sport is a little bit weaker this year?
I don't know if I would say that. I think you don't have those one or two dominant teams that you had in recent past, but you do have 7 or 8 teams, I think, that can really make a run at a title. And I think that's a little bit different than it's been in years past. The talent is a little bit more spread out this year. There's a little more parity. And I think there's not a whole lot separating the number 1 team in the country, the number 2 team in the country from maybe the number 8 team or the number 9 team in the country, right? LSU right now in the AP poll, they're number 9, and Texas is number 1. And LSU went on the road to Texas, and they had a double-digit lead in the second half in that game. So I don't think there's a whole lot of separating between all those teams that are grouped together at the top. I think the national champion will probably come from that group, but I don't know which one it is. I think they have all got pretty compelling cases to win it all.
LSU is the number 3 seed in the SEC tournament. They will play Friday night in Greenville, South Carolina. Reed Darcey will be there. Thanks for the time. Safe travels to South Carolina, sir.
Yep. Happy Mardi Gras. Y'all be good.
Same to you. That is Reed Darcey of The Advocate. I'm not gonna grind a lot of LSU women's basketball in November and December. That's not really my speed. But once they get to this time of the year, it is certainly interesting. And one of the most interesting aspects of this whole thing with women's basketball is I feel like there's a lot of Kim Mulkey. There's a lot of Skip Bertman in Kim Mulkey in that there's probably a lot of fidgeting that's done early. There's probably not a lot of importance put on one game here or there early in the season. It's just about learning how to maximize things at the end. And Skip was a master at that, and Kim Mulkey is a master at that. And LSU certainly has some shortcomings in the front court. There's no two ways about that. You don't have someone to fill Angel Reese's shoes. But they've got 3 guards that can go get it. And you add Anissa Morrow to that mix as well, and like they can score on just about anybody. And Kim Mulkey's teams generally play really good defense. I'm fascinated to see how this team shakes out once they get to the games that really matter. And I think it's brilliant to sit Flau'jae for 2 weeks. I feel like a lot of teams won't do that in various sports. They just they keep running a player back out there at 75% and just hope that the time helps. Just get her off her feet. Get her off her feet. You need her to be awesome. 75% of Flau'jae is not good enough to get this thing done. You need her to be as close to 100% as possible. And it doesn't matter on Friday night in Greenville. The game doesn't matter. It might move you down from the 2 line to the 3 line. All that does is change your uniform color in the Sweet 16. I don't care. So I'm fascinated to watch this team as they now start playing for keeps come 2 weeks from now when they get into the NCAA tournament. LSU, as Reed mentioned, the number 9 team in the country in the polls, and they are playing at Friday, 7:30 Central Time from Greenville in Bon Secours Wellness Arena, whatever that is. But that's when they'll play. Their opponent will be determined on Thursday. So we'll talk a little bit more about LSU women's basketball as things progress this month. Let's take a time out. When we come back, should the Saints cut Tyrann Mathieu? That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
So the NFL Combine was this past week and weekend, and the most newsworthy thing that goes on at the Combine is folks running 40s and lifting weights and jumping and all that. But it's also a big gossip hub. Just get a lot of GMs, a lot of scouts, a lot of coaches around having some cocktails, eating dinner. Reporters are around, and things just get tossed about Combine week. And one of the things that happened this week was the initial report from Sportskeeda's Tony Pauline, and he wrote an article saying that the Saints are considering releasing Tyrann Mathieu. There's 1 year left on Tyrann's deal. And the question is, would this be a wise move? Now, moving on from Tyrann Mathieu does not save the Saints any money. It, in fact, hurts them financially. The 1 year that's left on Tyrann Mathieu's deal, in my opinion, is not a year of significant consequence when it comes to wins and losses. I know that probably rubs some people the wrong way. You want to lace them up, go play and compete, and that may be the way the Saints are approaching it. I'm sure it is. But I'm sitting here analyzing things, and I'm looking at the roster, and I'm going, that's not a really good roster, and they're going to have to do some significant roster management to restock the shelves. And by the time they do that, Tyrann Mathieu will be gone. He said he wants to play 2 more years. He's only under contract for 1 more year with the Saints. Now, Tyrann, in his 3 years in New Orleans, has been a pretty average player, I would say. He's certainly not the all-pro that he once was. You're talking about a guy who was a first-team all-pro in 2019 and 2020 in Kansas City. He's not that anymore. But he's been durable. He's played in every game since he joined the Saints. All 17 games, all 3 years as a starter. He's been fairly productive, had 64 tackles the first year, 50 the second year, had 47 this past year. He's gotten his hands on the football as he generally does. 3 picks, 4 picks, 3 picks. And what you're getting with Tyrann Mathieu, on top of the durability, is a phenomenal locker room guy. It's a guy who has been around winning cultures, who does the right things, goes about his work the right way. And it's interesting to say that about a guy who was kicked off the football team down the street back in 2012. But at this point, now that we're 13 years down the road, 12 years that he's played in the NFL, he is an awesome guy to have on your roster. So to me, as I look at this, I would not cut Tyrann Mathieu. It doesn't make financial sense. I don't think it makes football sense. And if you're just talking about building a culture that is going to be important for Kellen Moore to come in and establish, this is one of the guys you want to have that's around to help do that. So do I think that moving on from Tyrann Mathieu will open up a spot for a younger player? I doubt it. I don't. Do you look at that roster and see somebody that's just begging to break through? I don't. We'll see what they do in the draft. But if I draft somebody that plays that position, wouldn't I like them to learn from Tyrann Mathieu for a year? A guy that's been a first-team All-Pro 3 times? A guy that's made 3 Pro Bowls? A guy that's been with a championship organization? You think I want to just toss that guy out, or do I want him to help foster the relationship with those younger players that eventually will take over for him? That's an easy call for me. I want that guy on my team. You look at his contract, his base salary for 2025 as a 33-year-old is going to be $6.25 million. That's expensive. His cap hit is going to be $11.3 million. But that's coming no matter what. I'd rather carry him as part of the salary cap than have dead money of 13.8 if you let him go. No thanks. So there was nothing elaborated upon in this report. There was nothing that suggested it was imminent. It was just something that was tossed out there. And I suggest no. I'm all about the Saints getting younger and cheaper. I'm all about that. But that has a focus on 2026, 2027, 2028. Somewhere in that window is the next really good Saints team, we hope. That is not in 2025, and that's the only year that you've got this money tied up in Tyrann. So, no, I'm not paying him the $11.3 million cap hit to be an all-pro safety like he once was. I'm paying him to be a durable player who's out there, who's still fairly productive, who's great in the locker room, and can help a new coach, a first-time head coach, command some respect. And I honestly can't point to 10 guys in the NFL who I'd rather have in the locker room from that perspective than Tyrann Mathieu in New Orleans. That's a guy who's got a ton of pride in his city, a ton of pride as a pro, understands his position in the league right now. He's already said he only wants to play 2 more years. He is the guy, the type of guy that you want to have as a part of ushering in this new era. So I am all about doing what it takes to keep him in New Orleans and happy. And I just don't see the positive to cutting Tyrann Mathieu. You don't get cap relief. You get worse on the field, and you get much worse in the locker room. That, to me, is 3 strikes against this idea. If you're just purely talking about his age and his ability as a football player, yes, he's lost a step. But he hasn't deteriorated so badly that you've got to move on. And your roster is not in a position to pick up and move on. I can sever all these ties, all this emotional ties and all this goodwill in the locker room and all that, if I feel like I'm making a change that's going to get me closer to the playoffs. I don't see that happening for this New Orleans team. They don't have the money to go out and get somebody who's a shoe-in to be a Pro Bowler. It's just not feasible. you might as well use the guy who's already taking up a significant amount of money at that position. So I'm out on that idea. I'm pro Tyrann sticking around in New Orleans for one more year. Maybe that's it for his career. Maybe he's got another year left in the tank. I certainly wouldn't extend his contract and keep him around for 3 more years. But for just one, which is already all he has under contract, yeah, I'm pro keeping Tyrann around in New Orleans. Beck, you're an LSU guy. You're a Saints guy. I'd like to keep the Badger around.
Yeah, I don't think that cutting him and saving, I don't know if they save it.
No, you don't save it.
Yeah.
You lose money.
Yeah,
his dead cap number is bigger than his cap hit number.
Yeah, so I don't see the purpose for it other than maybe that's a roster spot that you can just use for somebody younger. But still, I think you keep him around as he's going to be a good locker room guy. And he can still play. He's not gonna play every snap for you on defense, but he can still go out there and make plays. We saw him do it last year. We've seen him do it in the few years he's been here with the Saints. So I think you keep him and at least for this next year.
I'm pro cutting Derek Carr and moving on and eating all that money, because that is a vital piece to moving forward as an organization. Your safety, that's not nearly important enough for me to make some sort of swift move. It's just a very, very different conversation, and I just feel like that it's just a different conversation. It's just a different thing to keep him around. So we'll see. Nobody else is reporting that this is an imminent situation, so it feels like that it may not have a lot of substance. But you are going to see some changes that are coming with the Saints. We'll see what happens with Derek Carr. We'll see what happens with Taysom Hill. Some of these older players that have a lot of money attached to their deals, that there are going to be opportunities there, but I would keep Tyrann Mathieu around. So that's it for our Saints talk here on this Monday. Our Monday shows are brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. GCOPnet.com is the website. All your printing, scanning, copying needs. I give you this metaphor oftentimes when we talk about Gulf Coast Office Products, but you can do business with the big box store. And you're going to be a line item for them. You pick up the phone. You may get somebody in Atlanta. You may get somebody in Seattle. Who knows? They got the resources for you, but are you going to have a relationship that's going to be able to make sure that your relationship is as good as it can be? No, I don't think you are. If you can do business with the mom and pop shop, and you can certainly get them on the phone, but do they have the capabilities of actually servicing your needs? Potentially not. Gulf Coast Office Products strikes a perfect balance there. They've got enough resources to make sure that you're taken care of from a printing, scanning, copying perspective, and you're going to get that local feel with your rep and the folks that work here in Louisiana for Gulf Coast Office Products. You make a phone call to Trey Beal, you're going to get Trey Beal. You make a phone call to the office, they'll call you by name. It's Gulf Coast Office Products. Do business with them for your printing, scanning, copying needs. Find them online at gcopnet.com. It is Gulf Coast Office Products. Take a time out, come back and close things out. It's a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Join us at the Louisiana Outdoor Expo at the Lamar Dixon Expo Center from March 14th through the 16th. Head over to the front or back booth and register for your chance to win a U10 New Canoe, a compact, versatile kayak perfect for fishing and hunting adventures. Visit 1045ESPN.com for details. And you can also join LSU Athletics and the Tiger Athletic Foundation for Bayou Tradition's second annual gala, a Louisiana Saturday night featuring Jordan Davis on the field and in Tiger Stadium Saturday, May 3rd. We're giving you on-field access. Register to win a spot at our table at 1045ESPN.com. Support LSU student athletes NIL opportunities and reserve your table at lsutaf.org/events.
So, as is pretty clear, we did not have a child over the weekend.
Nope.
That's why I didn't go to Frisco. Thought that might be a possibility. Did I make a mistake?
We talked about this on Friday, and I
have hindsight now.
Yes, but I still wouldn't say you made a mistake, Hunt. I mean, it wasn't a mistake. It was a tactical decision on your part, because the possibility of what could have happened was not worth the potential of what you were planning on doing.
I mean, LSU baseball, my favorite team in the world.
Yep.
Get an opportunity to play 3 games, perfect weather, PGA Frisco. They're going to host the PGA Championship. They're going to host the Ryder Cup. Had an opportunity to play that with my dad and his buddy. There was a steak involved. My dad, they did go to that steakhouse. Said it was great.
Yeah. Probably
a couple of scotches could have been involved there. There's very little I like more than LSU baseball, golf, steak, and scotch. And it was all there.
Maybe you did
sit on the couch and not have a baby.
Maybe you made a mistake, Hunt. Maybe you did.
I'm feeling like it was a missed opportunity. I'm very disappointed in myself that I made that mature decision. Never make a mature decision. Be an idiot.
Yeah, don't, especially when people say, "Oh, we're adults, we have to make mature decisions." There are plenty of people that are adults that don't make mature decisions. It's okay to not make a mature decision.
Yeah, I just should have gone.
Yeah,
Frisco.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Look at that weather. It was like 70 degrees and sunny.
It was
LSU
nice.
won all 3 games. Instead, I'm sitting at home watching Aladdin.
Yeah.
Got Aladdin on the TV.
That's a good movie.
He wasn't into it.
Okay.
He's just all in on Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid.
Lion King and Aladdin just weren't really getting it done, but the Little Mermaid, he's way in.
Really?
He likes Scuttle, the goofy bird.
Oh yeah, he's funny.
He's a goofball.
Yeah.
All right, let's play Take It or Leave It.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Just take it.
All right, first one here. LSU's Lazy River celebration. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave this.
Leave it alone.
I thought it was funny until Chris Mykowski on the call said that it was 3 feet deep. I don't need my baseball players diving into a 3-foot pool.
That's
not deep enough.
That's not deep.
And
you should not be diving.
Who was the first one in? It was maybe Jake Brown, I think. I mean, that's the guy I need out there in right field, hitting the ball, running things down. I don't need him banged up because he dove into a shallow pool.
Yeah, this is one of those classic things where it's like, oh, come on, what are you talking about? They're just celebrating. But we have seen plenty of examples of guys getting hurt in celebrations.
Got hurt in a dog pile.
Yes, it happens all the time. Not all the time, but it happens enough to where you can be like, all right, maybe we shouldn't do that, especially this early in the season.
Is the greatest celebration injury, is it the Martin Gramatica or Bill Gramatica, whichever one was it, that blew his ATL out in the celebration? Or one quarterback, I'll have to look and see who this was. One quarterback scored a touchdown and ran to the wall and head-butted the wall and like jammed his neck.
There's been quite a few, actually.
Celebration. We can't have that. Injuries, so, yeah, I mean, it was good in principle, and then you realize it's 3 feet of water. I think that was risky for the Tigers.
It was. All right, next one here. The Dallas Mavericks just continue to alienate their fan base and just trying their best to have fans not be happy with them. Citing ongoing investments in the team and fan engagement, they say the Mavericks are upping season ticket prices by at least 8.5% for next season. Take it or leave it.
Man, I'm gonna leave it. You can't
leave it alone.
You can't trade away a top 5 player in the league and then immediately within 2 weeks raise ticket prices almost 10%.
Yeah.
There's a time and place to up the ticket prices. This is not it. Like if Texas football wants to up their ticket prices, like this would be an okay time. Everybody's really fired up about that. The Mavericks, no, not right now. We need to probably hold off on that for a year.
Yeah, if there was one job that I would not want, it would be somebody who works for the Mavericks having to call season ticket holders to ask them about renewing next season. Yeah, I would not want to be doing that this year. That is, I don't know what you can say if somebody says, "Well, you traded our best player and you're raising prices." What are you actually giving?
A few years back, the Pelicans called a family member of mine who had business tickets. He had tickets through his business, and he was calling to cancel them. And they said, well, what if we bring you down to mid-court and give you club access and cut the percentage like 30%? Will you keep him? He was like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how that conversation has to go. What if we put you like almost on the floor and cut your prices? Would that be okay? Yes, that's okay.
All right, next one here. 50-mile-per-hour winds tomorrow. Take it or leave it.
Get on the golf course.
Yeah, that'd be play some links golf.
I'm gonna leave 50-mile-per-hour winds.
Leave it alone.
That's not a great thing. So we'll see how the Mardi Gras situation goes in New Orleans. I know they've already canceled some parades. They're making some different adjustments to Rex and some of the stuff. But I'm not in on 50-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, I'm not either. Like, we're not even in hurricane season, and we're gonna have not hurricane force winds, but we're gonna have winds where I'm gonna have to go tie stuff down in the yard and make sure nothing's gonna fly away. Like, we don't need this.
So if I got you a tee time at St. Andrews tomorrow, would you prefer it be perfect weather, 70 degrees, no wind, or you would prefer 25-mile-an-hour sustained winds if you were playing St. Andrews?
Well,
do you want to do it in the elements, or do you want it to be ideal scoring conditions?
No, I'm not going to be scoring anyways, so I might as well play it in the way that in the way that it's usually meant to be played, which is with some wind. So I would do that. Well, what about you?
Give me the wind.
Yeah, we need the wind.
Give me the wind. Because like I said, I played Pebble and played 7 and the wind wasn't blowing, and it was the easiest hole I've ever played.
Right. You need the elements there. All right, last one here. I saw this on Twitter. People were talking about Travis Hunter and Shohei Ohtani. Travis Hunter playing wide receiver and cornerback is more impressive than Shohei pitching and hitting. Take it or leave it.
Leave it. That's not nearly as impressive. I think there are probably a few guys in the NFL that if you gave them an offseason could figure out playing the other side of that. I think there are plenty of cornerbacks that could figure out wide receiver pretty quick. It's a similar skill set. Pitching and hitting is nothing similar.
Yeah.
And he's better than everybody at both. So it just blows my mind. That's not the same.
I would agree with you there. I mean, it really is and plus, not to mention the fact that if you play receiver or corner, you already understand the other position because that's who you're defending every single play. So you understand the nuances of their position and how they might break out of routes and all that stuff. So you kind of already know how it works a little bit. So
it's a big, fast, strong. It's just big, fast, strong. That's what it takes, and that's the opposite of what's true in baseball with pitching and hitting. Just throwing 100 and hitting at 500 feet, not very
the same.
So. All right, that's it for a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Had a big breakdown of LSU's weekend at Frisco Park on LouisianaSports.net today. It's my Around the Horn series. It'll be up every single Monday. Just looking back at the weekend as a whole. I did that verbally for the first 30 minutes of the show, so you can go back and check that out. LSU men's hoops loses at Mississippi State. Briefly touched on that at 1:30 and talked a little SEC baseball. I'm just not ready to completely give up on Texas A&M, even though they're playing very poorly. I think most of their fan base is ready to completely give up on them. But we saw in Baton Rouge last year what can happen with a team that is not playing well for a stretch of season. They can suddenly figure things out. So I talked about that at the end of the first hour. NFL Combine results are now in. We talked about that at 2 o'clock. Reed Darcey, good enough to jump aboard and talk women's basketball. How bad is Flau'jae's injury, and what can we expect from her in the NCAA tournament? We talked to Reed about that at 2:15. And then should the Saints cut Tyrann Mathieu? I say no. You can go check that out at Hunt on Saints, wherever you find your podcast, or, of course, on YouTube. All that is on demand wherever you find your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show, like, subscribe, rate, and review. Excited for tomorrow's show. It'll be a Mardi Gras edition. We are working, so if you've got the day off, you can still lock us in all day long here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. We will preview LSU's trip up to Rupp, and we'll certainly talk baseball as well as the Tigers are back at midweek action tomorrow. We think we'll have Sharif Ishak from New Orleans. We'll see if we can make that work. But join us Tuesday for another Hunt Palmer Show. Matt's about to drive you home on After Further Review. We're back same time, same place tomorrow for a Tuesday edition, a Mardi Gras edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio, video, security solutions, avssla.com is the website. On Instagram, you can find them as well, and there's always great examples of their fantastic work at avss_BR. I saw earlier this week there was a great little image of some of the outdoor areas that Audio, Video, Security Solutions has worked on. They can also handle your security system. Nothing's more important than the safety and security of your home and your family. And at the Palmer House, Mitchell Fisher and his team at Audio, Video, Security Solutions came out. They installed our cameras. They supplied all the equipment. We didn't have to lift a finger. They installed the app on our phone, so we can now remotely arm and disarm the burglar alarm. We've got video of our front and back doors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Can rewind, can pause, can zoom in. Never pay any cloud storage fees. Call Mitchell Fisher at 225-439-7920. That's 225-439-7920. And start that process today. It's Audio, Video, Security Solutions online at avssla.com.